India charges us massive tariffs, massive. You can't even sell anything into India. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them.
April 2 is fast approaching, and with it are Trump's tariffs. Traders and economists have been dreading this date. India, like many other trade partners of the US, is on the tenterhooks. Will these tariffs force New Delhi to pivot to China? That's what we'll discuss tonight. But first, let's look at what is coming. This is the threat that Trump has been making for weeks now.
So on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in, and whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them.
What they charge us, we will charge them. That is Trump's logic, and this approach has shaped all his moves. He is targeting both friends and foes, including US neighbors like Mexico and Canada, America's biggest trading partner and rival China, and America's old ally Europe. They've all been slapped with reciprocal tariffs. And by the looks of it, India could be next. Trump has complained a lot about India. He's been doing it since his first term in office, although then, during his first term, India managed to avoid the tariffs. But this time, the situation feels different. There is anxiety both in Washington and New Delhi, because this would be the biggest expansion of Trump's tariffs.
We're going to be getting back some of the wealth that very, very foolish presidents gave away because they had no clue what they were doing. And April 2nd, I would have made it April 1st, but you know what April 1st is, April Fool's Day. I figured, I don't like doing it, but I made it April 2nd. But it's a liberation day for our country.
He's calling it Liberation Day. Here's how India is preparing for it. Prime Minister Modi held a meeting today, and two key ministers were part of this meeting: S. Jaishankar, who's India's External Affairs Minister, and Piyush Goyal, who's India's Commerce Minister. They discussed the impending US tariffs. It's not clear what they concluded with, but reports say that India is looking at a range of options. And one of them, interestingly, is opening up to China. That is one of the options. India could reduce curbs on Chinese trade and investments. Broadly, consensus is building on three proposals. First, a reduction of tariffs on Chinese imports. Second, fewer visa restrictions on China. And third, allowing some Chinese apps to operate in India again. Remember, these curbs were brought in after Galwan, after the clashes in Galwan, the border clashes in 2020, when Indian and Chinese troops came to blows. India had restricted Chinese imports back then, but now New Delhi could dilute some of these restrictions or lift the curbs entirely. The extent of India's concessions will depend on the severity of Trump's tariff blow. Reports say India will respond proportionally. Last year, India exported $74 billion worth of goods to the United States. $74 billion. So sweeping tariffs would hit a large chunk of India's trade. And if that happens, India's options would narrow. It could raise taxes on American imports as a response, and it could tilt towards China. India could tilt towards China. It all depends on how far Trump is willing to escalate the trade war. Now, reports also say that the US president is rethinking some of his plans, which apparently he always is. He favors a more targeted approach and not blanket tariffs on all trade partners. What does that mean? What is this targeted approach? On the 2nd of April, some countries or some blocs could be excluded. Or so they hope. Because with Trump, nothing is certain. Until he announces it himself, it is not a given. And even then, he is prone to changing his position. Reports say Trump is yet to make a decision, and India is actively engaging with his administration, keeping the focus on the trade relationship. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar raised it in January. He was in Washington, D.C. for Trump's inauguration. There he met the new U.S. Foreign Minister Marco Rubio, or the Secretary of State as they call him. It was Rubio's first official meeting in that role, and it was with the Indian Minister S. Jaishankar, which was a message in itself. Those talks led to the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Washington, D.C. in February. Prime Minister Modi met Trump at the White House. He was among the first world leaders to be welcomed by the new U.S. president. A potential trade deal was discussed between India and the U.S., and both leaders agreed to speed up talks.
Today, the U.S. Trade deficit with India is almost $100 billion. And Prime Minister Modi and I have agreed that we'll begin negotiations to address the long-running disparities that should have been taken care of over the last 4 years, but they didn't do that, in the U.S.-India trading relationship, with the goal of signing an agreement.
So the two leaders met early in Trump's term. It set the tone for more engagements. It triggered a wave of high-level visits. This month, another top Indian minister was in the U.S., Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. He held talks with Trump's trade officials. New Delhi also hosted senior members from Donald Trump's team. One of them was Christy Canagallo, the acting deputy secretary at the U.S. Homeland Security. This visit took place in February. Then last week, Tulsi Gabbard was here. Gabbard is the Director of National Intelligence. Tomorrow, Brendan Lynch is set to arrive in New Delhi. He is a top U.S. trade representative. Next month, U.S. Vice President JD Vance is expected to visit India along with his wife Usha Vance. So you can see the level of exchange at the top. And these visits are an encouraging sign. They show commitment in this relationship from both sides. But India should not mistake them for a trade breakthrough. That is not a given. Trump could easily change his mind tomorrow. Consider this. After raising tariffs on Chinese goods, Donald Trump is planning a meeting with Xi Jinping. Reports say the groundwork is being laid, and that sums up the U.S. president's modus operandi. He will wage a trade war and initiate dialogue at the same time. And the world has no choice but to play along.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
No, I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.